Welcome to Positive Recovery MD. If you're listening, chances are you want to create happiness around you and thrive in your life. We're glad you're here and you've come to the right place. This podcast will inspire and motivate you to not merely survive your recovery journey, we'll give you the tools to build or strengthen your foundation to thrive and flourish in your life. Each week, we'll come together as a community to have authentic conversations around addiction, recovery, and what matters. Growth and progress, not perfection. All while developing positive habits for you to utilize in your life. To learn more, please visit positiverecoverymd.com to sign up to receive the daily positive interventions that we'll review, as well as gain access to exclusive Positive Recovery content available only to Positive Recovery MD listeners. All right, let's get started.
Hello, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another installment of Positive Recovery MD with two special new things. We have three co-hosts, myself, Dr. Jason Powers, Julie DeNofa, and Jamie Demeris. We also have a special funny guest, Sarah Tollemache.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Glad that you're here, Sarah. And for a number of reasons, you're here in Houston, and we're super excited that you're headlining for the Sober Recovery Committee's Addicted to Comedy on September 24th. And so that's just such a great event, and we're super excited that you're part of that. For our listeners, Sarah is a stand-up comedian and writer. In 2017, she appeared on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert. She followed that up with another late night appearance, this time on The Late Show with James Corden. She's also appeared on Comedy Central's Roast Battle. When she's not touring comedy clubs around the country, Sarah can be seen regularly at the Comedy Cellar and New York Comedy Club in New York City. You can also now check out her new special, Voluptuous Boy, on YouTube. So we're happy to have you here, Sarah, and I'm happy to have you back here in Houston, kind of where it all started, I think. And so tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so I started here in Houston. My very first spot was actually on a showcase show to audition for the HBO Aspen Comedy Fest in Houston or in Austin. Staying with my brother at the time, and I saw an ad in the back paper, and I just thought it was just like an open casting call for like anybody that thought. I didn't realize it was like, I knew it was stand-ups, but I thought like it was just an open casting call. So I showed up and then I auditioned, and it was with probably thousands of comics. And watching them, I was like, oh, these guys are polished. It dawned on me like these guys are actually working, but I still went up. And as I said like earlier, I was still not the worst person, the worst comic that went up that day. Like I felt like it was good. And then a few comics came up to me afterwards and asked like, you know, where I perform. And I told them I don't. And then I told them I was from Houston, and there was a lot of Houston comics there. And then they told me about the open mic in Houston. And then that Monday I dropped my class at school and rescheduled it for another day of the week. And then I just started going every Monday for years to the Houston Laugh Stop open mic that was on West Gray at the River Oak Shopping Center.
Yeah. And so with an introduction that we usually have, right? Like we told our listeners a little bit about who you are and all about your kind of stand-up. But I think Dr. Powers is going to take you a little bit into a positive introduction and kind of share with our listeners what that looks like.
Yeah. So what we do on the podcast is, you know, we read the bio, and that tells somewhat of a story, but you have prepared the positive introduction for us. So in your own words, why don't you demonstrate who you are at your best?
Probably maybe the trait that I was kind of surprised about that I realized when you guys asked me this question was like back in 2008, before I moved to New York, I was going to a friend's house with another friend for a little hang. And as we got out of the car there, we were held up at gunpoint, and the guy took our bags. Then he was like, I need you to come with me. And in that moment, I remembered on, you know, watching Oprah all these years of saying that, like, if you go to a second location, your chances of survival drop like almost by like 100%. And at that moment, it was so weird. I told him, I was like, you got our bags, and I don't think we can't give you anything else, that we're just going to stay here. And he didn't fight it. And then he was like, okay, turn around and then count to was like a high number and then walk in that direction. And so at that moment, we walked to my friend's house, and it was kind of shocking to me for myself how calm and collective I was in a moment of crisis. And that I had realized, I think I'm really good in stressful situations. That was my positive take from that moment, is that I could handle something like that with ease, I guess.
Yeah. And so, doing this allows us to sort of know you at a deeper level, right? You're a comic, you've been on some national TV shows, and you have a great funny special on YouTube, and I highly recommend it. But knowing that when you're in a stressful as heck situation, I mean, I've had a gun pulled on me, and it is not a walk in the park. And when you're thinking, I mean, look, thank God for Oprah. But when you're thinking, when your mind is like going through survival options, and for you to be able to pull from your exposure to somebody saying, don't go somewhere else, and to have the courage to then speak up, it's pretty amazing. And I don't know if obviously you're a comic. Humor was one of your top character strengths, no joke, right? But yesterday when we were talking about this, and I don't know if you were being funny, but it was funny to me, that is, people that have a lot of anxiety are really great in stressful situations because they're preparing their whole lives for it. But there's something to that, right?
Oh, yeah. I was thinking that during COVID, some people had really hard times. And for some reason, I was just thriving. More so than like any other area of my life that I was like, I felt like I had a goal set in mind, and it helped me like focus what was important and what I should be doing. And not getting depressed about staying, inside. What can I do in this moment to make it better? So yeah. And I felt like that was probably from anxiety and stuff.
Oh man, that is awesome. Like, two things came up for me. And as an introvert, I felt most normal during the quarantine. And I know we're going to ask you to share your story with us in a second, but like something that really resonated with all of us was how you described the beauty of recovery is with doing all the little things. And it sounds like the quarantine and your perspective about like, what can I do, rather than, oh my God, look at all we've lost. I think it's the same. It's part and parcel of who you are.
Yeah, it's weird. I didn't think that of myself, but I guess you reflect. When you're reflecting, you're like, oh, I'm actually thrive in chaos. That's why I always liked waiting tables. I liked being busy the whole time, or like the only thing you could think about in that moment is one important thing, rather than like, I always feel like idle time is, whatever that saying is, the devil.
The devil's playground, right? Idle mind is the devil's playground.
Yeah, there's something about like apocalyptic times where you're like, all we need to do is just survive. And I kind of find that refreshing, rather than being like, do I need to go to this event? How is my social interaction in this place? And like, all that kind of thinking falls to the side when you're like, all I need to do is just survive in this moment. What do I need to do? What's the most important thing? And I kind of like living in that.
So what you're saying is that you'll be happiest if we have a gun pointed at you everywhere.
Yes.
All right. We're going to move on to the next little phase of our podcast, where our co-host, Jamie Demeris, is going to take over, and Sarah will tell her story.
Yeah, Sarah, I wanted to touch on what you were just talking about, because, it's not just when there's a gun to your head. Sometimes it's just as simple as just showing up and being present, and then doing what's next. I know for me in my early recovery, it was just doing the next right thing, and really doing the next right thing is you don't know what's going to happen when you walk into this group of people. You just show up and do it and walk through it. And then you start to learn to walk through those small little things that I know for me, it used to cripple me. And when we spoke yesterday, you talked a little bit about your story. And I don't know if a lot of people's stories are very similar in the sense that alcohol, cocaine, or whatever it was kind of takes over our life. But what I would really love to touch on is that piece where you made the decision to get sober and what it was that drove you to get sober.
I'd been drinking heavily, abusing alcohol for 10 years, always trying to fix it or feel like I could maybe moderate. And then I moved to New York to pursue stand-up on a more of a professional level. And as when I got there, I always knew my drinking was a problem. Like that was not an issue, but I think the issue was my denial of how to go about it, or that how I could control it was where I was in denial about it. And I felt like New York really put it in the forefront of what I needed to do, where I would, watch the comics that I admired in their work ethic. And none of them drank the way that I did. Like in Houston, we drank all the time during like at open mics when we were on stage for a 7-minute showcase show. It was just like always beer around. And then you see in New York that comics aren't doing that. And they don't even drink at the place that they work. If they wanted to go drink, they go to another, not the comedy club, even though that is a bar. It just looked unprofessional. That it dawned on me that what I wanted to do with my career and my life is that I needed to quit drinking. And it wasn't just career, it was also just relationships. I kept making bad choices or coupling with people that were also alcoholics and drug addicts because they never questioned me about my drinking. So all that came to like a head in New York, and I was just tired of that life. It's just tiring. It's exhausting. The anxiety that you would get the next day, the shame that you would have, that I just decided to get sober. I knew friends that were sober in New York. I tried kind of white knuckling it and doing it by myself. Like I was nervous about going to AA. It just seems daunting. But I had a friend after like a month just check up on me, and I was like just depressed because I was so lonely, because I had tied off all social interaction and I was just staying at home, that I was just depressing or just going straight to work, that he asked me to meet him at an AA meeting. And from there, it just got better. I started meeting other people that were in the same boat. I met comics. So it was like, it was nice to meet other comics that were also sober with years of sobriety or just getting sober. So I did have like a support group, and it helped out with the isolation. And it's always just nice to hear other people's stories and how you relate. And I also, we talked about, there's so many, it feels like cliche sayings, but a lot of them are so effective, and they're great to change your mindset when you start going into like negative thinking. Some of them like change a thought, move a muscle. I like, the ones that are like, kind of like keeping your side of the street clean. Does this need to be said by me? Does it need to be said now? Just that kind of, there's so many like little pieces of knowledge that I feel like just help me so much with how to behave as a human being. Cause I think I know for myself, like ego plays a huge part.
Yes. Yeah. And those cliches are, I call them, they're cliches until you actually experience them. And what it sounds like is that you started to experience these little sayings, and they started to take on a deeper meaning for you. You also described, I know Dr. Powers alluded to it a minute ago, there was a way that you described recovery.
Because I think at least my mindset, and from what I gather, a lot of people that enter in at least 12-step program, I think most people think as soon as they quit drinking within a week, you'll find the man or woman of your dreams and you'll get that promotion. But it's not like that. Most people don't get what they call the cash and prizes. And it is kind of frustrating when you hear people like kind of brag about their accolades in sobriety, because you're like, it's not what that's about. There was about maybe a year into my sobriety, I kind of, you're just like, I don't know, you feel like you don't know what you're doing. Is this right for you? And it was one day where I was able to like run in a few errands for my mom. I went to go meet a friend. I was able to go to a show and perform that night and then hang out afterwards. And after the day, just kind of reflecting on the day, I was like, wow, there were so many little things that I did today, and nothing was dramatic about it. I did it with ease. I could be there. And that's when sobriety really hit me. Where it's good for you is that you get to do a million little things in a day. And then they're not like magical, but the magical part of it is like, when you reflect that, I managed to accomplish all of this and nothing be an issue. And I was in the mindset and I could do it and I could be there for people that I love. I think that's where I realized what I liked about sobriety it's the boring. I think you have to embrace boring instead of living in like drama all the time.
Yeah. That was one of the reasons why I asked you to speak to that again, because when you were describing your addiction, what you were describing was how draining it was, because everything just overlaps and it's like this one long blur where you don't feel like you're really accomplishing, you're just pushing through. And what I heard you saying is that you were present for your family, for yourself, for your career. And I love how it's the pursuit of your career and the people that you looked up to that actually gave you some meaning that was missing, that was driving your recovery. Because Dr. Powers can speak to it, but a big piece of PERMA is, which is positive psychology and positive recovery, is the meaning aspect of it.
Yeah, I think, and even now in my life, as I've gotten older, and then now, 13 years into sobriety, sometimes I realize I don't care about actually having a purpose. It takes away the pressure from me to be like, maybe just being here is just the purpose. Being present. Yeah. Not being like, I need this career. I need this to happen in my social life. I need to, be married with kids and have like the most amazing career and house and cars and all that. But you're like, I'm just actually happy to have a simple life. Like, I'd be happy to be like an ant, just like my house gets kicked down and then I have to build it up again. Like, to me, that is actually just what life is. It feels boring or not like eventful, but I think if you can accept that it's not that, then I think things get better for you.
Do you feel like you're part of something bigger than yourself?
I don't know, because I wasn't raised religious, but I definitely feel like I can get into spirituality of things that are way bigger than you. And there's so much more in life that you can't even control most of it. And that it's just like wild to me to think like the probability or the permutation of all these elements and, minerals and all that stuff created life on Earth. And we haven't seen it anywhere else. Seems pretty cool.
Yeah. And I totally agree. And I feel like there is no meaning of life. There's meaning in life. It's what you make of it. And the way that positive psychology anyway defines purpose is being part of something greater than yourself, which often is not a religious thing. But for example, I feel like I'm part of the addiction treatment space, helping save lives, or rather, I'm part of the positive recovery family where we experience the joy of helping others flourish in recovery. So do you have any type of purpose? Because it has nothing to do with religion, really. Okay, wait, let me preface it. One of the traditions of the 12-step communities is, our primary purpose is to help the next newcomer. I mean, I'm rephrasing, but that's purpose too.
I was going to just piggyback on what I heard you speaking to, was that meaning and purpose is an evolving thing, because it was the meaning of your career and the people around you not doing it that were successful, that you wanted to follow in their footsteps and they weren't doing it. That was enough to get you to the point where now you probably got to a point where you wanted to have a relationship, and then you found the relationship. And then now you're at this place where the meaning is something different. So yeah, I'd love to hear more about how it's kind of evolved.
Yeah. I mean, I think 10 years ago, I get focused on the career part, but as I see that sometimes you actually can't control what happens in your career. A lot of it is luck and it's based on other people's opinions and their biases, and that you're like, I can't control that. So realizing or letting go of, that aspect of like focusing on my career made me realize that like, hey, maybe I just like, if a friend's like, you want to go hang, I can go hang with them. And that's what I do. Or like my sister, I remember she was in a transitional period for her career and she didn't know what she was going to do. And she just stayed with me in New York for a good few months. And that was nice that I could just be there, that I feel like my purpose is just kind of like being there. And, we were talking about like helping others. It's actually quite hard to help others because you can't force them. I have 2 friends that are going through this and I told them, I let them know about AA, but they're just like not into it. And I can't force somebody to get better, but just to know that like, hey, if you need to hang out or have any questions, that it's not an issue, that you can always reach out to me. That's the only thing that I feel like I can do. And that is what I feel like lately, what my purpose is. It's just kind of being there.
Yeah. And it's in that though, that like you, by being there for someone else, as much as you don't know it, you're actually helping them by being able to create that space. Because still in your addiction, you wouldn't have been able to hold that space for someone. I don't know if you were sober when your positive introduction happened, but in that space, by you being in your power, you had the power to help the person that was with you. Because if you weren't with them and they were on that street, what might have happened?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'd like to think my friend would be okay, but she has let me know that she probably would have handled it quite differently, because I think she was just like a deer in headlights. But, you like to give people the benefit of the doubt. I was sober at that moment, but I was drinking, meaning like I didn't have anything to drink at that moment or for those hours. Who knows, if I was drinking, I could have had a whole different reaction.
Today, in your recovery, with where you are, how does it feel to be coming back to Houston, get to share your gift of humor with the community in recovery and people that are supporting others that are in recovery at the Houston Council on Recovery?
It feels good. I like that I'm in the headspace that I can do it. And I feel like I've been around long enough that I can close out a show. It's still nerve-wracking. I put a lot of pressure on myself. Like, I don't want to let you guys down. And that's what I think about when doing this. I still walk in doing shows going, I don't know how this is going to be. Is this going to be a good experience or going to be a bad experience? Because I think I try not to, but some inadvertently, at least lately, I just feel like I'm offensive and I don't even, it's not my plan, but I just feel like some things get so polarizing these days, even on the most boring subjects. You're like, I had no idea what I just said was so political.
Well, it seems like in the world around us right now that everybody's kind of tiptoeing around and we have to be careful. And we're so concerned sometimes about offending everybody. And I think that when we just show up and be, that we can't go wrong, because Sarah, everything I've seen you be involved in, and I've listened to your podcast, Lady Journey, and it's hysterical. And the way you show up is funny, and you show up with humility and with, some of your character strengths that on the VIA that you took, and certainly Dr. Powers can jump in here, show up just in how you are, like judgment, like a lot of what you spoke to in your story. You use good judgment, making the decisions that you made to be internally driven, to kind of go after your sobriety. Like there wasn't a lot of external force, at least that was described. Like you didn't have to do it because someone told you had to. There was not legal implications or things like that. You just said like, I want what they have, and they're not drinking on stage. So I need to clean up. I need to get sober. So, and just kind of the fairness that you show along the way. I don't know where humility showed up on your character strengths, but I hear a lot of humility too. And just the way you describe the courageous acts that you've been involved in. So yeah, I hear you on the offensive piece, but I haven't heard anything offensive right now on this podcast, although I've heard it on some of the others.
Yeah.
There will be some people young in sobriety that haven't laughed in quite a while, and they're going to leave there realizing there's muscles in their stomach they didn't even have before.
Well, I hope so. And I don't set out to be offensive. That's not what I try to be, but it's just odd how things are even as a kid, I remember having conversations with my friend on the way from soccer. And I remember I had a teacher named Miss, I don't want to say her name, but she was just talking about like the kind of like the history of human beings. And we talked about like, isn't it crazy that we could be linked to apes or whatever? And my friend's mom like freaked out because she was really religious. And I had no idea that I had said the most offensive thing to her.
Oh my goodness. You and Darrow. So, man, thanks so much.
So, Sarah, what we've done is we've created a deck of cards. Instagram sold me, and this idea came up because when I grew up around my family, and this is nothing against my family, like some of the conversations we had just didn't really create authentic conversations. And the more I got into my addiction, the less authentic I was because I was trying to be who they wanted me to be, and I could never really be who I was. And so what these cards are designed to do is to create authentic connection with people that are around you. So it's a deck of playing cards that you can actually play cards with, but on each card is a question. And so we randomly picked some questions to ask you, and that's what Dr. Powers is asking you about. And when you come to Houston, we'll give you a deck as well as one of the Positive Recovery Daily Guide books. So anyways, take it, Dr. Powers.
What was the best gift you ever received?
Oh God, this is so hard. I don't know. I like cooking stuff, but like, I feel like on a deeper level, I mean, I have to come back to that one.
Okay. Like what kind of vapid person would you be if you said, oh, this red blouse?
I know.
What teacher had the biggest influence in your life? And it doesn't have to be a school teacher.
Oh, teacher. I think like I learned a lot from life from like improv teachers of just like how to respond to things and, you know, go on your first instincts. I think those are the teachers that I felt like gave me stuff that was more useful in life than what you kind of learn in school.
Absolutely. I mean, you talked about this in your podcast, but you know, it's a lot of wasted education just doing arithmetic and reading, and there's no school of life. There's no like, here's some emotional tools. Like, this is how to like, what's the rule in improv? If somebody says something, you go along with it. Isn't there like a cliche?
Yeah. Yes-anding. And it's so beneficial.
Right.
I use it all the time in my life. It's, it's so effective. I mean, I saw a TikTok yesterday talking about the proper way to respond to text. And I was like, this is such valuable information.
So what was yes-anding? What was it?
Yes-anding is like, you learn in a performance to keep the flow going in a scene. Like instead of being like, no, saying no, they give you a gift of like, oh, you went to the beach yesterday. Instead of going, oh no, I was at the mall. You go, yes, I was at the beach and I brought a towel. Like it just keeps the playfulness going. And I just find that it helps in life in general. And I try to respond to like a lot of conversations that way is to yes and them instead of just like being a wall.
Yes. And it's like being agreeable, and it's so much more pleasant. No,
absolutely. It's a better place to come from, I think. Okay. And I also think the try not to be funny, like do not force funny, which is a big thing in improv. Like just play the scene naturally and it will be funny. Like have faith in that. Like, yeah. I think of every moment like when you try to be funny, that's when you kind of become offensive. You didn't read the person well. But if you're just authentic and I think responding, like even if you don't know the answer to something, somebody used the word irreverent a while ago and I go, oh, I don't know how to, I've heard that word. I don't know what it is. And then they didn't know how to define it. I was like, oh, it pays to like, just be honest. Cause then it shows that person also doesn't know it as well.
That's so true. All right. So the last question, and there's a lot of debate, a lot of internal debate about this, but what do you think is the most important invention in history?
I guess, I don't know. I would say like, is it like the printing press? I think starting.
Two people with humor.
That's what I said.
The exact same.
Yeah, Sarah.
Yeah, well, it's the way that we have become the top species, I think, is sharing knowledge and then having something produced in mass ability which is what, it leads to like internet and all that stuff, that I definitely feel like the printing press plays a huge part in that.
Yeah, just for the listeners that are out there, right before the show, we were talking about it. Julie and I were actually driving back from Dallas one day. We spent an hour on that topic, talking about a couple of things. And we threw it out to Dr. Powers, and that was the first thing that he came to. And for you to pull all of the inventions out there, to pull the printing press, there's something in that. I'm going to look into it.
And the printing press was $14.90. Is that correct? Did I get that right?
$14.40, $14.50, but the 1400s.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I would have said the iPhone in a weird way.
Oh my God.
That's what I said.
But the original concept of the iPhone, I would say, is the printing press. So I went to that instead.
Yes, it is.
One.
It is. The printing press is what created the iPhone. But then the iPhone, there's like so many inventions just within the iPhone itself that have kind of revolutionized things.
And the one thing that it's used the least for is in its name. I mean, like how many times do you use it to make a call?
I never answer my phone.
Right. Why is it called the iPhone?
I just do email and text. I rarely, unless my mom calls at a weird hour that I'm like, oh my God, something must have happened. That's the only time I really answer.
So true.
All right. Well, thanks. And we're going to go on to the last segment, which is the positive intervention. Julie, take it.
All right, Sarah. So we at Positive Recovery use the Positive Recovery Daily Guide, and we do these daily interventions or daily intentionals with our clients, with our staff. And for our listeners, we did send this in advance to Sarah, and I'm going to open it with a quote from Greenville Kleiser. And I think this actually speaks well to Sarah and some of what Sarah talked about. Good humor is a tonic for mind and body. It is the best antidote for anxiety and depression. It is a business asset. It attracts and keeps friends. It lightens human burdens. It is the direct route to serenity and contentment. And so we asked Sarah to participate in the positive intervention. And we know that life is short, but it can seem awfully long without a sense of humor. A humorless human is like a car without shocks. Every bump, turn, and imperfection on the road will jolt both mercilessly. Fostering your ability to laugh at yourself is like installing a super shock absorbing defense system. Humor can help you cope because it softens the sharp edges of what can sometimes be a very harsh reality. Laughter is medicine. It releases feel-good, pain-relieving neurotransmitters in the brain, and it literally helps to alleviate pain. So for the intervention, we really just wanted to laugh. And I will tell you, over the last 2 days, spending a little time with Sarah, we've done a lot of that. In the positive intervention, Sarah, we asked you to set aside 1 minute every hour for laughing. And I as I read this positive intervention, I thought, like, God, like, how do you plan to laugh every hour? Like, I know I do it, but how am I going to plan to do this? Because when I ask a guest to do the positive intervention, I kind of do it along with, so I can share in kind of the experience. So it said that we could do this alone or with others. And I did a lot of laughing yesterday and today already. Life has not provided material to naturally incur laughter, laugh independently in front of a mirror. And I could do that also. I don't know if you had to employ that, Sarah, but tell me about what your experience was and how you kind of had to set aside time for laughter based upon this positive intervention.
Well, this sounds really bad, but like I just get a kick off of TikTok's comment section. It's like the people, what they say on videos, is funnier than any stand-up comic I've ever seen. It's like crazy how many funny people are out there. And I do go to, I love memes, and those are like, I think those things help me at least laugh once an hour for sure.
That's awesome.
Well,
I just want to point out something that I heard in that, and that was the effect that humor has on somebody else, that it like has this chemical reaction inside the body that like it raises them and gets them out of anxiety. And when we were talking earlier about being up to something bigger than yourself, like when you're up on stage, the impact that you're having on the hundreds, if not more, or thousands of people that are watching your show or listening to your podcast, when they're walking away, that they're walking away feeling better. And there was no direct correlation to you because you were off in another part of the world. And here they are, like reaping the benefits of something that you created.
Yeah, it's wild.
It is wild. It's powerful. And what I will say is that we're hoping for you to have Houston laughing, like Jamie said, to the point that people find muscles they didn't know they had. So on Saturday, September 24th, from 8 to 10 p.m. at the Houston Council on Recovery, you are headlining for Addicted to Comedy. The feature act for Addicted to Comedy is John Wessling. And then the MC and opener for the night is our very own Mike Peterson. And Sarah, I can't wait to see you there.
Oh, I'm excited. I look forward to the evening. Also, I'm friends with John Wessling, so that'll be nice too.
Oh, cool. So also for our listeners who want to laugh, can you tell a little bit or plug a little bit of your podcast that you do?
Sure. Yeah, I have a newish podcast with my comedic partner, Katie Hannikin, who's super, super funny. It's called Lady Journey Podcast, and we're like the working woman's Goop. And we try to make fun of all of like diet culture and fashion and all this stuff that ladies get into, like overnight oats and just the minutia of life, and try to laugh at it. And that's really what it is.
Yeah, your opening for your podcast talks about healing crystals and being able to into jeans.
Yes.
At the opening.
Yeah, finding the most perfect pair of jeans, which I'm still on that mission. It's actually really difficult. And so it's just funny that you're like, how is it in this world that we do stuff to space or go to space, we can't make a perfect pair of jeans or a bag that works?
Women aren't the only ones that try to fit into their jeans.
I just can't find a flattering fit. I had one pair in high school and I think about them all the time.
I still have mine from high school hanging in my closet with high hopes. Well, Sarah, thanks so much for joining Dr. Powers, Jamie, and I. We have enjoyed having you as a guest. And again, look forward to seeing you on Saturday, the 24th.
Yeah, I look forward to it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Positive Recovery MD. Don't forget to visit positiverecoverymd.com to sign up to get your daily positive intervention sent straight to your inbox. Be sure to subscribe to Positive Recovery MD on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcast to receive an automatic download when a new episode drops. And as always, if you or someone you know needs help, visit positiverecovery.com or call 877-4SOBRIETY, which is 877-476-2743. We are here to help.